Cool, we'll do it that way. Hey, good morning. Let's see what we're going to talk about here. I'm going to go kind of off on a different end here. I was reading through some stuff last night, and a question that always comes up to everyone. What do you believe in? If we're talking about the world as it is, and we're talking about, let's say how it began or what the narrative is. And I've come to the realization, and I say that because it took me a long time to get there, that we don't know it all. Anybody smart enough, anybody with enough honesty has to come to that conclusion. We don't know it all. So therefore, we're prone, until something is proven, we're prone to using that narrative as our belief, as our, not just truth, there are sovereign truths, but as our way of speculating the totality of life. We'll say it that way. You can turn around and look at a storyline and say, this is how everything began, or this is how it was. You can do that. If I was to look at something like Lord of the Rings, okay, I would know that it is fiction. And the reason why I'd know that is because it doesn't match up with what we know historically. Okay. I could look at some of the stories of a faith, and I still have to use that metric. And when I look at something such as the scriptures of Hebrew, which in turn ended up being the Christian, there becomes a problem at the beginning. I'm not saying that those people did not live and survive in that timeline, but there is a spin in there that does not jive with the rest of the world. There is a spin in there that does not match up to Earth. Not only as we know it in a science, but as we know it in a study. Okay? Once again, I don't discount the lineage at all. And I don't discount the teaching of Jesus, but it's also in the teaching of Jesus that he turns around and says a bunch of these kind of things. So it's not picking truth. You know, if someone shows me a rock and says this rock is 20,000 years old, and they've got the ways and means to do it, carbon dating and all that, who am I to disagree with that? Especially if I knew that if I was a scientist and I went by the metric of what I know in my studies to be true, you know, I would have no problem. We know that when we see things a few hundred years old and we're able to go, oh, the person that sold this says it was from such and such period. Okay, we can turn around and look at that paper, look at that material, look at that whatever, wood. You name the material, the medium. We have a way of figuring it out. We do it with paintings all the time. Okay? So I have no doubt when you look at things around the world and then you hear some other culture in one other small part of the world say this is how it all began, or this is how, and it doesn't match up, there's a problem. And the problem isn't that the rest of the world. You can't turn around and whisk that whole concept away with that it was a spiritual entity that has put a ruse over all of our eyes. You know? And so that's where I kind of go, what do I believe in? And you're going to ask that kind of a question. You're going to have to narrow it down to what you're asking about. We got scientists that for years thought the Big Bang was it, and others that didn't. And now we're starting to understand that there's something a little bit more to it than that. We all want it to be so cut and dry. You know, we all, I believe it or not, through a pastor, we all believe a narrative that is linear. I could see this jagged, spongy material that's orange in a long strip and decipher everything else about it and tell you everything I know looking at it. But until I pick it up, and then all of a sudden I start shaping it, I start realizing that strip actually fits together and it's one long orange peel that is round. I would not have known that looking at that long strip. And if I didn't know what an orange was, chances are I probably wouldn't have put two and two together. So that's kind of what I'm saying. You have to come to the point and realize we don't know everything. And until we know everything on that one subject, we don't know anything. And you can throw your hat in and believe anything you want once you kind of get an idea. But until that narrative comes down that we know it, you know, there's always going to be that slight doubt. We do have ways of going, no, this is it. Now, if you want to fabricate a fantasy around that you want to call a reality, well, then have at it. But this is real. We do have that way of doing that. There. That's life. Life in the fast lane is over. For me, I am off to work. Beautiful sunny day ahead. Right now it's foggy, which tells me what? That Summer is slowly waning. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. Love you. Got nothing but love for you.